Welcome to our advanced exploration of Microsoft Excel. In this video, we'll explain and demonstrate what is essentially a function wizard. Now, Excel also offers, effectively, it's a function wizard to help you put functions together. So you just choose where you want the function to go. Let's just click here, for example, and then Insert Function. And if, for example, you choose All, there are a huge number of functions available, and some of them get very advanced. For example, some of them are specific to financial uses, such as here. Function name DB returns the depreciation of an asset for a specified period using the fixed declining balance method. That's not something I'm familiar with, but perhaps if you're in finance, that's something you'd use often. So there are a lot of options here, but just by way of example, let's stick with something basic. Let's go with most recently used and stick with the very simple sum, which essentially just adds things up. So, okay. This screen appears, so number 1, and basically when it says number 1, it means total 1. So what are you going to add up? And you can either type in the syntax here, or you can click here and make a selection. So for example, let's say I want to add up everything here, this area. Okay, when I'm happy with that, and that's the section C8 through to H11, so C8 colon H11. Let's just click that, and it's done. And I can just OK that, and there's the total, 154. And you can see that it's already been added to this cell. Or you can do multiple additions, so we can add up a second total. Click here, and let's say we want to add up all these as well. So that's C12 colon H12. And let's say, and actually that's now come to 463. Let's say we now want to add up this as well, just that. So basically we're adding up every single number on the spreadsheet, on the worksheet rather. Okay, B13, click that. And finally, let's add all of these. So really, we're adding up 4 sets of numbers and adding them together for this specific cell. So that becomes a value of 842. OK that, and it's done. And there's the syntax for what we've just created. There's the formula. So it's pretty straightforward using sum. And as you can see, it's C8 colon H11, comma, C12 colon H12, and so on. So it adds each set of these up separately. Everything divided by the commas is added up separately, and then it adds them all together as well. And you may find the function wizard in Excel also useful just for becoming familiar with the syntax for creating your own formulas. You may not always wish to use it, but doing Insert Function, and if we go with if this time, for example, and it also gives you a broad overview of what that function actually does. It doesn't actually tell you that in the most helpful way. Some of the language is cryptic, but it can be useful if you just play around with it so you become familiar with different types of functions. And then you can just add the syntax by hand from then on if you prefer not to use the function wizard. But for example here, if logical test, if this is logical. And it does define logical test. It's any value or expression that can be evaluated to true or false. So let's just say, okay, let's tuck that out of the way and let's say, let's add all these up. But okay, that in itself isn't particularly helpful. So if C15 added all the way through to H15 is higher than 0, and you would actually need to be familiar with the if syntax to be able to expound on what Excel gives you by default. So it is very useful to know the syntax of these functions. So let's start with that. Okay, C15 through to H15 is greater than 0, and actually what I really wanted to do was add those up. So again, this is where it's useful to know the syntax. So really, if the sum of C15 added up through H15 is greater than 0, and it tells you here that it's true, obviously it's true, then if true, do this, or otherwise, do this. And we've already covered this in a previous video, but we can very quickly do this as a demonstration. Let's say, and actually we don't need to go to that editing view. We can just type in directly here. If it's true, we can just say true. If it's false, we can just say false. Okay. Okay, that. And not surprisingly, it says true here. Whereas if I select these and replace them with 0, let's replace them all with zeros. And now that becomes false. So that's how you can use the function wizard to become familiar with the different functions available and help you structure your own functions. Again, I keep saying this, but if you want to become familiar with Excel, you need to be familiar with structuring the syntax of the formulas yourself, since that gives you the most flexibility. And really, that can help you achieve whatever it is you're interested in achieving with Excel. That's better, I would say, rather than depending on the wizard, because the wizard, as you saw, isn't always the most intuitive interface for creating your own powerful formulas.